in season and out of season to my husband again. We were wondering if Pastor was going to make it here this morning because there were some challenges, and I looked at Mike and I said, well, you're up. And I had no idea I'd be eating those words later this evening. So I'll use my scriptures kind of midway. God just kind of laid something on my heart as far as, just kind of like last time, to just share what he's been working on with me and the reason why and different things like that. So I believe I was sitting at my brother's graduation party with Sister Mary, and I was telling her that I love methods and how I fell in love with methods because I know that I will get certain results. And I know it'll be done in a certain time frame. And for me, that's comfortable. That's expected. And I feel at my best when I know what the results will be because of a certain thing that is performed. And so lately, and especially over the last year and a half, my husband and I have gone through some really tough storms, as what most people would say. It's been kind of rough. But during these things, I kept asking God, what am I doing wrong, God? What did I not learn previously that I'm having to go through this? Show me so that I can get out of this and get out of it quicker. Like, just tell me what the lesson is. I will learn the lesson. And so, as most of you can tell, I'm a little impatient with God. Is anybody else like that? You're asking God, what did I do wrong? Okay, I'm not alone. All right, it's not just me. Does anyone else ever associate, everything is going good, that must be God, and everything that's going bad, that must be the devil? Anybody else ever been like that? Sometimes I think as a church we tend to gravitate towards that. All good, it's all God. All bad, it's all the devil. And I'm going through all these trials and storms of life, and I'm going, God, what am I doing wrong? What am I not being faithful in that is causing this to happen? And so God had to tell me, he goes, I am still there in the process. And he goes, I'm through all the letdown. I am there through it all, and all of the hurt and the disappointment and the everyday mundane things of life, the daily work life. I am there. And he told me to just be real with you guys and just tell you what I have been praying for. And to be honest, I have been praying for God to take away the battle because I'm weary and I'm tired, and I'm like, God, I don't know if I can take one more battle. Just take this away from me. And of course, I have a lot of dialogue with God. Just as I'm talking to him, he kind of talks back in that same tone with me. And he told me, hey, everything comes in stages. He said, remember when you were praying for a breakthrough? He goes, do you realize what you were praying for? You were praying for a fight. He goes, when they break through the walls of something, he goes, they have to go in and take whatever else is on the inside. He goes, when the children of the Israelites walked through, Jericho and all that, he goes, the people hadn't moved out. They had to go in and take the city. He goes, when you're wanting to do something for me, or you're wanting to do something in business or life, you've got to be prepared to walk through that next fight. And you've got to be motivated to move through that realm too. And I don't know, did you ever pray for something from God that was more of, God, get me out of this because I don't want to go through it, or God, get me out of this because I'm not comfortable here? Instead of praying for his purpose in the battle. I feel like I've done that a lot lately. So 1 Samuel chapter 17 talks about David and Goliath. And I've got my marker here so I don't lose my place. He told me, he goes, you don't want me to remove the fight. You should be praying for me to provide more faith so that when you're done with this battle or this lion like David, you can be ready to move on to the next battle, which for David was Goliath. Because everybody realizes there's going to be a next battle, right? It doesn't just stop. They don't just go away. And he said in verse 45, David said to the Philistine, You come against me with a sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the sea, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword nor by spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. You can be seated. I don't know that as a teenager, a young 20-something, that I would have been able to walk up in the face of all the adversity knowing how many other people have said, we can't beat him. The armies of Israel were like, we're not going up against this guy. He's already killed too many people. He's killed his own people in practice battles. We're not going to do this. I don't know that I would be able to do what David did, but he had so much faith in God because God had protected him out in the fields when he killed the lion and the bear with his bare hands, protecting the sheep when he was on the backside of the desert. He was able to say, hey, my God can do anything. And he walked right up to him and said, I'm ready to go. And a little further down, it says, as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly to the battle line. How many of us are ready to move quickly to the battle? Because I'm telling you, lately, I've been backing off, going, God, this must not be you. This is not good. This is not you. I'm going to back off. This is not my comfort spot. And so when God brought this scripture, he said, David moved quickly to the battle line. Reaching into his bag, taking out the stone, having slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead, the stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. He triumphed over him, and he took out the Philistine's sword and cut off his head with his own sword. Later on, God would use that sword. David would have to go into the storehouse and grab that sword for battle. But had he not been in the fields, in the back deserts, defending those sheep from the lion and the bear, he wouldn't have been able to face Goliath so he could take his sword. And I was like, okay, God, all right, what exactly are you preparing me for? And he said, you don't want me to remove the fight. You want me to provide more faith so that you can move on to the next battle. It's not a question of whether or not you're prepared for the battle. You can borrow the confidence for your next battle from the faithfulness of the previous battle. Amen. And I was like, okay, I've got to start remembering all of the previous battles that God has fought for me and allowed me to come through in order to get me through so that I can face the next one. He said, God is not putting you into a position to fight. You have to realize you're fighting to stay in the position God's given you. God told David he was going to be king. He wasn't fighting Goliath for any other reason to just stand his ground because he was going to be the future king. He had already given him the position, but he had to fight some battles in order to have that position fulfilled. And just as David was anointed to be king, he had all these other problems going on. It was very hard he was still being a shepherd. That day he was delivering food to his older brothers. He was still on food duty. Mom sent him to go take lunch to the big brothers. And here he had to step into a position almost instantly, and he ran towards battle. A lot of the times that lately I've kind of really I've been broken, and God knows that I don't like to cry, so he's been making me cry a lot. I felt all of this brokenness just in my spirit where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where we were going, and I'm like, God, I know that you provided us a home here, and I don't understand why now. I kind of felt like I was in my promised land. I got where, I always wanted to go. And then there were all these problems, and I said, God, what is it that I'm doing wrong? And he goes, this isn't the end result where I wanted you. This is for a time, and this is for a season before you move on. And I said, God, I feel like I'm really broken because the things that I'm going through are not working And I know you said this is the path. So why am I so broke? And he reminded me of Jesus being at the Last Supper. And he goes, was the bread in Jesus' hands not broken? And I said, well, yeah, he broke it to give it to everybody. And he said, was the bread still not blessed in Jesus' hands, even though it was broken? And I got to thinking, I said, God, even though I'm broken, I am still blessed with whatever it is that you have for me in my life. I am still blessed even though that I am broken. He goes, the point was that the bread was shared throughout because there was a greater purpose in just being food that night. It was being used now to fulfill God's promise, the Father's purpose, which was to seek and to save that which was lost, and to prepare Christ for the ultimate sacrifice for all of us. In Philippians 4, I don't have time to read it all, but Paul was in prison talking about problems and the different things that he had been through, and he was like, God, I have been through all of this. I'm writing to the church telling them of every single thing that I've been through as an apostle to the church and all the persecution that I've endured. He goes, but when he talked to the church, he didn't see them as problems. He told them of the opportunities that he had to minister to the people in the jails, in the prisons, the people that were along his route that helped him and blessed him along his route, even though his destination was prison. But he saw the opportunities that God had provided him. And so for me, it was a perspective change of saying, okay, God, I'm not going to see this as a problem. I'm going to see this as an opportunity to find out what it is that you want me to do here. Because that shifted the feeling that I had, the thoughts in my head, the words that were being said. It changed all of that when I could see it from God's perspective as an opportunity instead of another problem. Sometimes we miss God's provision because it's disguised as a problem. These storms will only bring the rain so that the seed can grow. Mark 4, 1-8 says, again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. The crowd gathered around him was so large that he got into a boat and sat in it out on the lake while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. He taught them many things by parables, and in his teaching he said, listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so they did not bear grain. Still other seed fell on good soil. It came up, grew, produced a crop, multiplying 30, 60, even 100 times. And then Jesus said, he who has ears, let him hear. He goes on to talk to the disciples about perceiving and understanding and how that's different from just seeing. You can see something and not perceive it. You can hear it, but you may not understand it. And so he goes on to talk about the reason why the seed was there. And so for me, that kind of brought out the reason why I kind of felt like a seed. I had never seen anything. We've heard the parable before, and I've always heard, oh yeah, and you plant your seed and let God grow it, and you have a harvest. Has anybody ever thought about it from the seed's perspective? Have you ever felt like you've been put down in a very, very dark, deep place, had manure thrown on top of you, and the rains just keep coming, and you're alone, and it's cold, and you don't know when you're going to see the sun again? That's kind of where I've been at. And I was like, God, what are you trying to show me here? And he said, sometimes it's when the seed is all alone, down deep, in all of the manure, without the sun, and sometimes being flooded with the rain, that it will bust out of the shell through its protective layer and grow. See, all those seeds have a protective layer that protects it until it gets through the top of the soil and it gets to see light again. Inside that seed is everything it needs to get to the top of the soil. It's all encompassed. Everything is there. Its nutrients to get through to the top until it sees sunlight is already there, feeding itself. But it has to go down deep. It has to get down deep enough into the soil, because if it doesn't, and it gets into shallow soil, it'll sprout before it's ready. And then when the sun comes, when it's being scorched and it's hot, almost like the trials where we're just like, God, I don't know if I can take it one more day. It withers up and it falls apart because it didn't get deep enough down into the root. And so God was trying to show me that the reason why sometimes I have to take you to a deeper place, and the deeper place is so that the roots are down there to hold you up. So that when you press through and you see the sunlight and you're like, wow, I can grow. He goes, it's going to get hotter. You're going to go from cold to hot. He goes, and there's going to be more rain, but you're not going to wash away this time because you've got your roots planted where they're supposed to be. The end result is that the seed begins to grow. And in verse 26, he also said, this is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up, and the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself, the soil produces grain, first the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. As soon as the grain is ripe, he puts the sickle to it, because the harvest has come. The end result is that the seed provides more seeds for the next generation, for the next season. Because after harvest comes a time where, right now, we just visited my husband's grandmother last night, and I've always been showing my kids this every time we go over there. We see the soybeans growing, we see the corn growing, and then we went there this time and we watched it grow all summer long, and now everything was cut down. And I just looked at it, and fall has always been my favorite season. I love fall. It's my favorite season in the whole world. And I said, I wonder why that has always been. And God said, because it's time to eat off of the harvest and get ready to prepare for planting season. Because all of that has to be cleared off first in order for the next crop to come in to be planted. But it's got to go, now that ground has to be, gone through that barren season. It's got to go through the cold. It's got to go through the ice and the winter and all that, because all of the rain, all the nutrients that come from being left alone can help it regenerate so that it can be more fertile ground for the next season. And I was just like, wow, like my favorite season now actually has a little bit more meaning to me, other than, yay, I get to wear boots and sweaters. It's because there's a season for everything, and there is a time for each season. However, from the farmer's point of view, the farmer says, I'm going to plant you down in there, and I'm going to leave it there. He's not going to come up every single time that it rains and dig up the seed and put it somewhere else, because that's not how the seed will grow. He's got to leave it alone. He's got to trust that God's going to do the watering, and that it's going to take hold, and it will eventually grow in the time that God prepared for it. How many of us have sometimes taken our seed or taken ourselves as that seed and like, oh, you know what, it's not working, I'm going to go over here now. Or, hey God, you know what, I don't think it's working, so I'm going to go into the greenhouse where it's nice and cozy and it's warm throughout the winter, because I don't want to be down on the ground where it's cold right now. Has anybody ever ate a hothouse tomato compared to one that's been grown on the vine? The taste is completely different because there's more nutrients in it, because it went through the process of absorbing what was around it during that time that the soil was able to provide for it. Same way with us. The farmer also does not say, God, don't let it rain, all the water. No, because he knows that everything that's coming down is going to be used for a purpose, and he welcomes it. He also doesn't say, God, don't let it get hot. Don't let these trials bother me or make me uncomfortable, because the heat is what breaks open the seed. The heat is what allows it to dry out the bottom so that it can send it up through the top. It's necessary to growth. All these stages. I heard a story one time about the fishermen. They fished all night and they caught no fishes, and then Jesus came over and said, throw your nets over into the deep. And they were like, but God, we've never been over there. I kind of heard Jesus reply in my Misti kind of way, the way that I kind of interpret things. And he said, yeah, you've never been over there, so you've never gotten what's for you over there, what I have waiting for you over there. You've never received what you're about to receive because you've never been in the place that you're about to be in. I remember a man telling me one time, you can't catch a boat full of fish in ankle deep water. I was scared of going on a boat because I can't swim. If I can't see the bottom of the water, I don't want to get in. And we were going fishing, and it was a very, very muddy lake. And I'll never forget that day. Wendy pulled I think it was a 12-pound catfish, and she was about Haley's size. It literally took the rod and it was pulling her down the hill, and it took my uncle grabbing it and pulling her and the rod back in. But it was so dark that once you got your ankles in it, you couldn't see anything anymore. But everybody wanted to go swimming, and I didn't know how to swim. They're like, oh, we'll put you on a raft. We'll be all out there. And then, of course, I got knocked off of the raft, and I remember going under, and I remember not being able to see anything, and I remember I could hear everybody going, where'd she go? And they were reaching for me and pulling me, and finally got me up, and I remember coughing up the water, but I remember the water, even though it was really dark, it started changing colors the darker I went down. And I kind of felt that way when I was thinking all of these thoughts about everything that we're going through, and sometimes when I'm thinking on all of the problems, how it starts of just a little bit of worry, starts with a little bit of stress and a little bit of worry, and then it goes into depression because I can't stop thinking about it. The water has gotten darker and darker and darker. And unfortunately, because I haven't called out for help, there's no one trying to grab me and bring me back up. And so God was trying to show me, he goes, if you just call out, if you would just sing out. I enjoy coming to service, I enjoy the singing, but I have a really hard time of actually vocalizing that. And so he said, the reason why your mind wanders a lot of times is because you're not actually singing aloud. If you would begin to sing aloud, even though you don't think your voice is the greatest, he goes, you would be getting those positive words back in, and the thinking would begin to change. And your spiritual aspect of that would begin to change. Your mind wouldn't wander as much in service. He goes, but that's you calling out to me when you're sinking down and the colors begin to change. The water is getting darker and darker. So I've been trying to do that lately and be more comfortable with, number one, asking for help, but also being content in the state that God has me in. And knowing that the seed is planted for a purpose. No farmer goes down and plants a row of seed of apple trees hoping to get cantaloupes. God knows why he planted you there, and all you have to do is grow. Grow where you're planted, and know that God is in control of everything that's coming down your way. He wouldn't send it your way unless there was a purpose for it. And I've been told that. I've been in church for almost 40 years. And I should know that, but when we're going through the problem, it's hard to remember that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's one coming through. It's hard to focus on that unless we as a collective body are lifting each other up and letting them know, hey, I'm praying for you. Hey, I thought about you this week. Wanted to let you know. Those little tiny things make a very big difference in as small a church as what we have. We don't have some people say we don't have the luxury of getting lost in the crowd here. I love not having that luxury because I want to know that at times that I'm hurting and times when I'm going through stuff, that there are people in the church body that are ready to lift me up and to just say, hey, I remembered you this week, or hey, I said a prayer for you, or it's great to see you today. I was so excited when Brother Victor came, He's only here for 2 more weeks, but he came from Africa, and our church is, the first that he visits. And it was so great to see his smiling face today. It kind of renewed a little bit more of my joy, just to say, how have you been? How's TK? Is she still working for the government? Because they're getting ready to do elections soon. And, he even said, yes, pray for her, because they work in a very, elections in foreign countries, while ours might contend with them, they are a little bit worse. And she has to go around and do a lot of stuff that sometimes they have to have guards for, in order to protect her while she is doing government work. And so it was good for him to see that, hey, I've been thinking about you and keeping, you guys in touch, as it was for me to see him smile and to kind of give me a little extra boost today of, yes, one of my brothers is here and I'm happy to see you today. So remember that when you're going through whatever it is that God has you going through, that it is something that has a purpose. And remember too that when you think of others or when you see others, that I do very well at putting on a very good face. I've been a preacher's daughter for 20 some odd years. I know when to say amen, I know when to clap my hands, I know when to stand and say, hey, thank you, Lord. But there are times where sometimes that becomes monotonous, and there are things that we can't share or things that we don't feel that we can share. And so I'm sure that other people in the congregation feel the same way, especially if you're a pillar or an elder in the church. People looked up to you to make sure that they can go to you in prayer, they can go to you for confidence, confidentiality type things. Remember that, is that each one of us needs to be calling out the other's name every day in prayer so that we can be a stronger church, so that when we are going through, I believe our church is going through like one of those planting seasons. But if we don't stay put where we're supposed to be, we can't grow and we can't produce more seeds in order for our church to grow more. So just like going out and being fishers of men, we need to do that here in our congregation as well. One of the questions God asks me, how will you know that what you're capable of until you get beyond what you're comfortable with? And it made me really think, because there is so much that I am comfortable with. I have a beautiful church, I have a nice car, I have a nice family. I don't have the, I guess you would say, the nitty-gritty of what people that would normally go through a hard time would think of. But it's not so much the item as it is the spirit of it. And he said, once you become uncomfortable, once you become being able to make a decision based on what I want and not what you want, he goes, these thoughts and this process gets easier. And I had to really think about that for a long time, especially the last couple of weeks, because he just kind of reminded me. He said, when you do something over and over and over again, you become comfortable in it. He goes, it's the same way when you change something. It's just doing something new, and now you have to do that over and over again until you become comfortable in that. And he also reminded me at the end, he goes, but don't think that I'm not going to change it up for you after you get used to this either. He goes, there's an ultimate purpose, and that's to grow you as much as I can before your purpose is up here on earth. Because he reminded me that time is short. And I've been, like I said, almost 40 years in church. I keep hearing, Jesus is coming soon, Jesus is coming soon. Well, I've heard that for 40 years. What's your definition of soon? I've actually asked that. I'm like, God, is it ever going to happen? Is it really going to happen? As a teenager and as, young adult or whatever. And he goes, there is a purpose for you, but you have to remember that time here is so short that if you aren't focused on growing and you remove yourself from the soil, I have to plant someone else in order to get the seeds for the next season. And it really made me think about what I was doing with my purpose. And when I am praying to take away the battle, am I also praying to take away the future seeds for the next generation? And it made me think about the different things that we have in life and what is important to us and what's important eternally. And that eternity should be more important to the things that are going on than the things that are going on right now. So if you would, ask yourself, where is your comfort zone? And what makes you uncomfortable? And this week, could you do something to make yourself uncomfortable? Because God challenged me to do so. And I'm not exactly comfortable talking to a big group of people. I would rather talk one-on-one with someone, have coffee, or do something like that. That makes me uncomfortable. So he's asked me to get out of my comfort zone and talk to some people that may not be here anymore, or that may have been missing for the last few weeks, or something to actually help this church here, our congregation, our family. He goes, you would do it for your brothers and sisters. Why wouldn't you do it for your brothers and sisters in Christ? I'm like, okay, I need to start treating this a little bit differently. And so he's opening up my eyes to see the things that he needs me to see, because for too long I've been focused on what I want and not what he wants. And so it is a process. I ask you guys to pray for me during this process, because I get comfortable, as I'm sure all of you do. And I know that it takes change and it takes time. But I am hoping that God guides me just as well as he has in revealing this, as he is going to help me through the process. So if we could, because I know that this is something that is on Pastor's heart a lot, if we could take a few minutes around the altars and ask yourself and ask God what it is that you want me to do this week, so that I can be one of those seeds that ends up producing more seeds. What is it that I have to do? What is it that is coming towards me with the next battle that I need to face? What preparation do I need to make so that I'm ready for my next Goliath or for my next season of harvest? So if we could come around the altars for a little bit, and then when you're done, you can consider yourself dismissed.